Hi everyone, welcome to THT, and today we are going to talk about the Bothon Network Tournament. This is the second edition that this tournament has been organized, and we're going to take a look at the results of this event and see how it went. So just for context, those events are not official FFG sponsored events. And there were about 8k worth of product on the line for those individual events. There were also a team event that happened on the same weekend. We don't have as much data on this event and the deck list, so I've decided to not cover this event, at least for this video. Maybe we'll do a separate video if we get more information. But for now, we're going to be focusing on the individual event as it was played throughout the same rules as we do for other events, which means best of 3 with a sideboard. So the way that worked is that there were two pools of events that both were run into 7 rounds of Swiss, and then we had the top 16 between the top 8 of both pods. So that was a really cool tournament format. I wish it would have been double elimination. I think double elimination should be normalized for top cuts. But yeah, needless to say, it was a great event. I have to say that I have a great appreciation for any community run event in the community, because I think it's very healthy that a community, even though obviously there needs to be an official OP circuit that needs to be run by the company itself, by FFG. I think it's very healthy to have some fan-made tournament that involve around this. I think this is going to give us more leverage, it's going to give us more independence to run things the way we want it to be run. And I think it's always very healthy. Of course, the Bothon Network has been an extremely positive force in the Star Wars Limited community in the US, and they also are amazing players. So of course, I'm super thankful and really happy to see this evolving. So basically, I think as far as I understand, the players were able to run in both events if they wanted to. I think I've saw some couple of names that basically took part in both events. So we don't exactly know how many people were in the total of the two between the two events, but there were about 100 players on the first pool and 116 players in the second pool. But since you could take part in both, there's probably some overlap in there. Anyway, needless to say that even though it's not like a sector qualifier size event, it's definitely the biggest event we had so far for Secrets of Power, and this is obviously very much worth looking into in details in order to learn more about what the meta is going to be. This video is sponsored by Card Market, the best marketplace to buy and sell cards in Europe. And we're gonna go jump and take a look at basically the overall meta for on the first pool, which had about 100 players, as I said. I'm only showing here the decks that were represented, at least as a 2 exemplar in the thing. As you can see, Padme Amidala with Starkintown was the most represented leader alongside Amiral Piet, which is very interesting. Amiral Piet is a deck that got a significant upgrades from the new set, but it's still a deck that suffers from the same problems of being very weak to aggro, and also the same problem of being very inconsistent. Amiral Piet is an amazing deck if you get everything you need whenever you need it, but whenever but it has some consistency issues. The new set has helped the deck, and also I think the second position in Munich has basically probably encouraged a lot of players to pick up the deck. But yeah, so very overrepresented in my opinion. This deck doesn't deserve it, as I love don't get me wrong, I love Amiral Piet, but it doesn't deserve to be the second, like to be the most played deck in the event. And then Padme Tarkintown, which is probably the safest bet for the best leader in the new set, ended up being very represented as well. And then after this, it's very balanced. You get the usual suspect. Han Solo, Raid, Data Vault also see a lot of play. This is a leader that got a lot of help from the new set. Han Solo from Spark of Rebellion. A lot of Han Solo. This is Han Solo Yellow. Interesting. A lot of Han Solo Yellow being represented, which is very interesting. Then some Sabine, and then the usual suspects, Han Solo Blue Force, Han Solo ECL, from Han 2 ECL, Han 1 Grain, quite a few Quinlands, and some Han 4 Talking Town, which is a deck that saw a lot of play during the Two Moons Invitational that we looked into previously, and did quite well there. And yeah, cool. And this is pretty much what the meta looks like after the top 64, which is pretty much, it's not half, but it's a bit over half. So as you can see, Amiel Piet still pretty well represented here. Han Solo Spark of Rebellion also quite represented. So Piet basically hold up its market share here relatively well. However, Padme went down pretty hard, and the usual suspect kind of hang on in there basically. So very interesting to see that. Of course, it's worth what it's worth, top 64, meaning that in this mix there's people who didn't really do very well but are still represented, because top 64 of 100 players is basically 64% of the meta. But still nice to see, kind of have a better picture on what deck really converted. Because Piet did relatively well, managed to hold on its market share relatively well. As far as pool 2 is concerned, slightly more players, and we'll see once again Piet being the most played deck in the event, which is very surprising. I mean, Piet was really well positioned in this meta because of the amount of mid-range decks that were there, but as I said, I think it's kind of I don't think this deck is that good that he deserves to see that much play. But then Padme here as a second position once again, and then Rated Vault this time really being popular, and then Han Solo, Han 1 green, very popular, Sabine Initial as usual, very popular, and then once again Han 1 yellow, seeing a lot of play. I wonder exactly what kind of list people were playing there. And yeah, so moving on here, you move into top 64, you see basically Piet still holding his market share really well. Ray went up, and then everybody kind of maintained its but it's really impressive. However, once again the trend continues. Padme went down pretty low in the ranking after being one of the most played. It kind of went down really pretty hard. But yeah, so yeah, that's very interesting to kind of have an overview of what was being played before we jump into the more details of the top 16. The top 16. And we take a look at what the different lists were played. So first of all, we had the list of Copycat 99, of a famous player. We saw him playing Take the Initiative, also did some result into one right in there. He's a known player, and decided to bring a Han 2 Data Vault in this event, which honestly is just a really solid deck. We know the deck was obviously had its very big success in Jump to Light Speed, and it's coming back here as just this classic mid-range shell, which got quite a bit of help. So a couple of things that are surprising to me is no Mina Bonteri, so that's a bit of surprise, because even though yes, she maybe this deck is not really looking to play 2-drops, because you can basically shit out into play like a 3-drop on turn 1. She's still a really solid card that draws you a card when she dies, so I just feel like it's just a really solid card. But he decided not to run it, and yeah, this deck has very few new cards from the new set. Actually, pretty much no card from the new set as far as I can see here. Not even Karis Nemec also is not seen play. Karis Nemec is a bit more understandable because she does die whenever Han 2 ability is used on her, which makes her not as good, even though she can actually leave a spy token if she dies. But yeah, pretty much just a good old Han 2. Not much to say about it. It's there's a couple of interesting card choices like Protect the Pod, which can act as a removal. I think this deck has no difficulty dealing with relatively mid-sized unit. I think it's the large size unit that are really a problem. And then Protect the Pod can only help you if you do happen to have a very large unit in play, like a Krayt Dragon or a Killer and Beck. I'm afraid that most of the time your units are just gonna be a little bit too small for this to actually be able to kill something very meaningfully big. So, and also the fact that you deal damage to your own unit most of the time is going to make Protect the Pod a little bit harder to use. So I wonder how good this card was in this deck. And to me, it does not really answer the problem of the deck not having enough like removal that can take care of things unconditionally, which is really what this color combination struggle with. It does solve that problem after sideboard with the Feral Dragon and sideboard. And he also plays Marine off the side, which I really wonder in what sideboard he wants this card. Because this is more the kind of card you would want to run into the main deck, but I don't think this is the best card for her, especially since there's no Anakin to actually enable. And then Chewbacca just as a grindy kind of smuggle card, Once again, a bit of a surprising choice, but it's only a one-off. Bombing Run, of course, is very much anti spaceship. So yeah, no new card here, just solid onto Data Vault action. So moving on now to the next list is going to be Ray Data Vault, and this deck got a lot of help in this new set. One of the big help that it has, so we've seen the 2/3 restore 2 cards being used here to basically race against space aggro. It can be really powerful unless you get to run against the new TIE Fighter that can turn off keywords. But other than this, this can be a really good card, and you can actually buffer to up to a 3/4. So that's an interesting choice to see that card here. I don't think this is going to be a mainstay in the deck, but it is definitely an interesting option to look at. There's the new 1/4 here, really nice, can be turned into a 2/5, and the Sentinel's ability is very relevant. Definitely the best 1/4 to run after R2. So really good. We also have the new Bo-Katan. She's not extraordinarily powerful, but she is the perfect deck for... Ray is definitely the perfect deck for her. You do have a relatively large board presence, meaning that you get to dish out a lot of experience token for the amount of units you defeat, so the effect is very powerful. And she does something that the deck did not have access to before, which is kind of a board wipe that goes relatively wide. So whenever you're playing against a board wide deck, Bo-Katan is very helpful in that particular way. So I think she has a place in the deck, and she does answer something that the deck did not have access to before. So I think she's we're gonna see more of her in Raid of the Vault. Obviously, 3 copies of Mina Boteri, which is an absolute no-brainer in Ray. It's just a great card to upgrade into a 3/5. She draws you a card when she dies. She's just exceptionally, one of the best to drop in the game in my view, and an absolute auto include in this deck. The rest is pretty much what you would expect. You also see the Captain Typho, which is another auto include in my opinion in Ray. It's, in my opinion, is one of the best Sentinels in the game. At least it's the best 4-drop Sentinel in the game. Just a really solid card. So very solidly defensive deck. And another great card for the deck is obviously Hyperspace Disaster. Ray does do a good job at buying time against space deck because it has a lot of Sentinels and it has a lot of heal. So it's a deck that can stay alive longer against space decks. But the problem that Ray had was that he was not able to really stabilize the game against space aggro. Most of the times the space aggro would just basically outrace you, and they will just like go outmaneuver, you can't heal anymore, and then I'll just finish you off. So the deck does a good job at delaying the game, but it was basically just delaying the inevitable that you would lose against space aggro. And basically Hyperspace Disaster just solved that problem outright. It's only 1 copy in a 60 card deck, but there's 1 more copy in sideboard. I really would think that you would want to have 3 of between the main board and the sideboard. Also, there's no way to tutor it, so it can be a little bit inconsistent. But I think it's definitely a great addition to the deck. And yeah, so the rest of the deck is I'm not gonna go over to it because it's pretty much what we would expect. Take a bit look at sideboard. We got a couple of Rex. I think Rex is really good in some matchup, not so great in others. So having it in sideboard does make sense, even though a lot of people would want to have this in the main, especially as it does fill out the curve really nicely. And then yeah, the rest is what we've seen with the Unity of Purpose in such a matchup is very strong. So yeah, that's just a really good deck that just got another upgrade. The big question that we're gonna ask for Ray is Ray going to be able to solve the problem that it had in Legion of the Force. The Legion of the Force decks were incredibly the Force decks in particular were really good at just outgrinding her with Kia di Mundi. They also were better at outpacing her because of Hantu's ability. So will Ray be able to beat those mid-range deck is the big question we're asking right now. I feel like the deck has gotten a lot of new tools, but is that really going to be enough to beat mid-range is the big question we're asking right now. Most of the new tools that we can see here are mostly tools that helps against aggro, not really against mid-range. So it is something that we are going to have to answer and see if that is something that the Ray Data Vault can solve, and if the deck that saw a lot of play and basically did not really make any top 8, only 1 top 16. So that's obviously something that is a little bit concerning. Moving on to a deck that is definitely going to still be a thing in this set. It is going to be the Han 1 green. The deck did not really get anything new with the new set, but just a really powerful, well-rounded deck that will definitely beat up, especially when it's not expected, because it has particular line that really requires very specific answers. It's a kind of deck that is very powerful, I think, early in the set, because it's a very powerful proactive strategy, whether you're going for resupply turn 2 into Han 7/7 deploy, so you're basically getting a 7 cost on turn 3, or whether you're going for the space lines with the Falcon into pilots into kill you and there's nothing you can do about it. Those are very proactive strategies, and I think proactive strategies are very powerful early in a set where the set is being figured out, basically. We saw Han 1 green winning the 2 Moons tournament, even though that version of 1 green was very metagamed anti-space. This one is a lot more classic, a lot more than by the book. A couple of bamboozle in the main, but overall the deck is just pretty standard. And I think this deck is very much like it's really good early in the meta, because it's a deck that is extremely proactive, and proactive strategies are very powerful early in the meta. Moving on, we got Terror number 9 bringing is Sabine Yellow, and this brings a little bit of a smile on my face when I see that. Terror number 9, of course, is a YouTuber, is a Star Wars Limited YouTuber, and also a great player. And I thought that my very first game that I played against another human being of Star Wars Limited was against Tower, and actually the game was recorded on his channel. You can check it out. It's quite old, so you have to scroll quite a bit, but it's basically he was playing Sabine Yellow and I was playing Tarkin Green. That was my very first game of Star Wars Unlimited that I played. It was back in when the set was not fully spoiled. So actually, Sabine was just being relieved a couple of days before that game took place, and he brought against me Sabine Yellow, of course, a very archaic version of the deck, but it kind of brings a smile to my face to see him succeed with that deck almost 2 years later now. More than 2 years later, which is crazy to think about. And so Sabine Yellow is a deck that has gotten a few tools in the set, but in this case he's not really using most of them. The only new card that is really running is Karis and Bale, so really great 2-drops. I feel like this deck has basically filled up the gap. Basically in previous sets, Sabine ECL has always been like far better than Sabine Yellow. I mean, Sabine Yellow was playable, but it was definitely more of a niche deck. Sabine ECL definitely was the main event, and I feel like this set has definitely brought those two decks a little bit closer together in terms of power level. I feel like Sabine Yellow definitely is getting more help from this set than Sabine ECL is. Will that mean that Sabine Yellow will take over? We'll have to find out, but definitely Sabine ECL is Yellow got a lot of help. Obviously, those 2 drops here, Karis Namek is just insane in every deck she's run. This one is also for Sabine ECL, but yeah, Bail Organa is another great card for Sabine Yellow, as this deck has no bother discarding cost. In this case, you place 2 in the main deck and 1 in the sideboard. The rest of the deck is pretty much what you would expect. It's pretty much textbook Sabine Yellow. He's even running Alliance X-Wing from, which is crazy to think that this card is still seeing play. Now, it is very surprising that he's playing Alliance X-Wing over the N1 Starfighter, the 3/2 in space. I wonder why is he running it? He's afraid of things that deals 2 damage to a unit. I wonder which card he's really scared of, that he's really want to have the 3 health. That would be an interesting question to solve. But yeah, cool deck, and we're ready to move on to to Chrono from the team K2OD, who brought the Han 2 ECL, a deck that still is very powerful. I have to say though that the meta seems to be quite hostile to this deck, with so many people running Padme Talking Town. We know that Han 2 is always a bit of a struggle against those Talking Town decks, even though they can win against it. It's still a bit more of a struggle. Because you really have to play around that, of course, the Talking Town with your ability. So, but obviously this deck has gotten some really significant upgrades from the new set. We saw the Jar Jar Binks, which I think is going to be a mainstay in most aggressive green decks moving forward. You deploy your leader, you get your leader +2/+2. That's very powerful, and it's a card that is very playable. Even without the plot, it's a very playable card. We also saw the forgot the name of that card. Sorry. Beloved Orator is the name of the card. Sorry, it's comes as a 2/3, brings a spy with it, and you can play it for 2, so you can go 2-drop, and you can bring basically a 2/1 and a spy token alongside it on turn 1. That can be really, really powerful. Obviously, Charismatic is great in this, even though you can't play her for the discount without killing her. It's still a great card in the deck. And Queen Amidala is probably the biggest upgrade that this deck has. Being able to play that card 1 turn earlier, and this card having 1 health, is just a trade that you can take any day of the week. Unless you're running against a specific deck that has -1/-1, it means that you're basically... The 2 minus health doesn't matter because of her ability, the fact that anybody that deals damage to her, you can just redirect the damage on... You can just sacrifice your need to ignore the damage. That means that you basically don't care about the extra, the 2 damage, and you're putting 9 points of damage on the board on turn 3 in an aggressive deck is simply just incredible. So that's very, very powerful. Another interesting card that completely went under my radar, I have to admit, is the new Arc 170, and this card is great in this deck because it basically acts as a... It comes into play, and you deal 2 damage to... if there's a damage unit in play, it comes to play, deals 2 damage to a unit. That's very powerful. Because obviously whenever you're running Han green, you always Han 2 green, you always have damage unit in play because of their ability, and even we can just put it on Arc 170 himself to make it like a 4/1 that deals 2 damage when it comes to play 4/3, which is kind of like a Dark Trooper. It's basically a better version of Death Trooper, but in space, which is really, really powerful. I'm even surprised he's only playing 2 copies of it. It's such a great card. Yeah, we also see the Korean Hounds being played in the sideboard. That's another very interesting card against all space decks because, once again, you play it for discounts, 5/3 that comes to play ready. That's very aggressive. We also see Let's Call It War, which is kind of the new Grenade Strike. It's basically better Grenade Strike, basically. And then the Shamsindulas in the side, even though most of the time they were playing in the main. So really, really cool deck. This deck really got a lot of support from the new set. But they might see the meta might be a little bit hostile to it. This is something we'll have to find out. But really, really cool deck and some really cool innovations here in this specific version. Moving on to the BTO, who was running the Yoda Green Force, that's pretty much the deck that Tim from Team Enigma we've been working on, and the deck has effectively we managed to. He did quite well in the 2 Moons Invitational with it. It's pretty much the same deck. Like, there's no difference. I think he's only playing 2 copies of You're My Only Hope instead of 3. There might be a couple of changes here and there, but the deck is pretty much what you expect. You see the Captain Typho is here. The Trader's main deck, the Hyperspace Disaster, very helpful against the false decks. And obviously the Mina Bonteri, and that's just a deck that, just like Ray did a Vault, got a lot more help. I think, in my opinion, I prefer Yoda Green Force over Ray because it's a deck that's a bit more of a punch. It's a deck that is capable of very, very explosive games with double ramp very consistently, and it's a deck that's just a little bit faster, and when the leader deploys, it's just so much more impactful. So I personally prefer Yoda Green Force, even though it's a bit of a different deck than Ray. Ray is definitely more slower, more methodical, but Yoda is, even though the leader deploys later, it's actually a much faster deck in my view, and that makes it a better deck most of the time, in my opinion. Moving on to Yoda Killer from Team Bothan Network, who brought Cad Bane Tarkin Town. We're on a very mid-range heavy meta, therefore Cad Bane is always going to see play in, as long as control pretty much doesn't exist, and mid-range is everywhere. Cad Bane is going to love this. So this is his version of the deck is pretty classic. There's not many new cards. There's a couple of new cards though. There's 2 Sudden Ferocity, which is a red card that has seen quite a bit of play, just as 1 or 2 of. It's a card that is pretty solid, that sometimes can turn your leader into a breakpoint that will allow him to kill something that normally would not be able to kill, and this can sometimes win you games, and is very action efficient. And once again, it's one of those plot cards that doesn't hurt to put a couple of cards in your deck. Is it better than Blasters? Would you play it over Blaster? Sometimes, yeah, sometimes a situation where you would rather play Sudden Ferocity over Blaster. I still think that Blaster is overall the better card, but here we're going for 2-2 splits. Some interesting things though. He's also running the Gundar Badland. I always forget the name of that card. Sorry, it's the card that comes to play. You name a card and you discard a card of that name. It's basically the new Bazine. And looks like he's running both. Actually, those two cards kind of synergize with each other because you can run Bazine, see your opponent in hands, make your opponent draw a card, and then you can play this dude and you guarantee to hit. And so a lot of hand disruption. He's basically going back to a more classic 2-drop version of the deck using Aura Sing. And you're also using the 3 copies of Cadbane. So definitely a more mid-rangey version of the deck. A bit slower. Jabba the Hutt has a much lower card advantage engine. Definitely a slower version of things we've seen before. And in sideboard we also see a couple of interesting cards. We also has an Unrefusable Offer being played. I think this card is a trick, so it's part of the Jabba toolbox. Arrest though is not a trick, it's a law. And it's a card that also is kind of here to bring specific situation. I wonder exactly against what he wants to play Arrest. Maybe against very annoying Sentinels. Arrest, as opposed to No Good To Me Dead, can really help you against Sentinel units, or can allow you to get rid of certain units that have loads of upgrade on them, can reset their upgrades. That can be very useful. So there's a couple of things that Arrest does better than No Good To Me Dead. So interesting to see exactly in which matchup he wants to bring them in. And yeah, that's pretty much the deck. Very interesting updated version of Cadbane Tarkintown, going back to the more mid-range route. Moving on to G-Fire 61, he was running Han 4. Tarkintown is the only Han 4 Tarkintown who managed to make top 16. A deck that we saw basically played in the Two Moons Invitational, and this deck is fairly similar to the version we've seen before. He's winning a couple of forgot the name of that card, but it's basically the new bounce. There's also Undercover Operation, which saw a little bit of play on the version, and also aggressive negotiation. Aggressive negotiation, I've always been a little bit not a big fan of this card in this deck because you just do empty your hands so quickly. I can't see many situations where this would deal enough damage. But I mean, you have ways to draw a card with Boshek and C-3PO, but you're not always going to find them. So I wonder how often this card actually was that good in this deck. And then obviously having the main upgrade for this deck is the Sudden Ferocity. Is just a great upgrade to be able to it makes your flip turn so much more consistent because it allows you to have more ways to spend your resource on a card that's not a card from your hand. So the problem with Han in Han Deploy is that it does spend basically all of your cards. You need to find ways to kind of have cards to play on. So you of course have card draw like C-3PO or Boshek, but you're not always going to find them. And so on the flip, you really need to have enough cards. He's not playing the other card, the other plot card that was played for 3 that also allows you to exhaust enemy resources, which I think is a good option in his deck. That can do quite a lot, but it's powerful. Really depends on the situation. Sometimes the situation where it's not that great. Obviously, the deck also got some upgrade with the A-Wings. It can go double 1-drop with some actually decent 1-drops much more consistently. Even playing the Starhopper Canyon Runner as a 1/4 on the ground is another vehicle that is odd cost, and then you can run as a double 1-drop opening, so that can be quite good sometimes. So yeah, another version of the deck. The crux of the deck is pretty much the same as we have seen, so no much else to say. Now let's get into the top 8. Into top 8 we had Overlay 28 running the good old Han 2 Blue Force, and without any surprise, so pretty much the deck that everybody kind of knew that was going to make it to the deck was the Captain Rex. This card is really, really strong in this deck because you can play it for the discount. It's a very flexible card that will just put a tremendous amount of pressure. Just the amount of stats that you're able to put is just really, really incredible. This version is not playing Karis Namek because Karis Namek doesn't combine really, really well. It doesn't combine super well with Han 2's ability. With that being said, I just think the card is too good to not be played. So in my opinion, I still think he should be played in this deck, but also maybe he's running just too many blue cards, makes it a bit more inconsistent. I also like the addition of aggressive negotiation because the card runs quite a bit of card draw with the Kia di Mundi, so you can end up with a lot of cards in hand, making aggressive negotiation very, very powerful. So I like this as a 2-of, just as an option to be run. In the sideboard, we saw the Galleon Urso being played. I'm sure it's a card that has been effective in many matchups in the sideboard, and we also see the Lando Calrissian as well as a way to heal. So yeah, Galleon Urso on your flip turn. It's not a card that you have to play with Splot, so it's also really good against control, but I can see this being very useful against Gar ECL to kind of block the Vader at the right moment. That kind of thing can be just super effective. Blocking a key barrage whenever you want a Kira flip, you know you can come in and just block barrage, really strong. And obviously against any ECL deck, you deploy with Han, you get the Galleon so you can block ECL. That just is so effective against all those ECL midrange or aggro decks. So you really a card that we're going to see a lot. We're also seeing a lot of I haven't talked about it too much, but Outer Rim Constable. See this card a lot. It's really a card that it's funny because when I saw it, I was like, okay, this is a slightly different version of Fang Fighters, but it really seems to me that this card is really seeing a lot more play than Fang Fighters. Really, like a lot of people are just taking out the Fang Fighters, putting this instead. Obviously, Space Deck will still prefer to play Fang Fighters, but pretty much everybody else prefer to play Outer Rim Constable just because it gives you more two drop to play on turn 1, and it's also a card that you can grab from Cop Veins, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Moving on, talking about Cop Veins, here we go. This is the Anakin Data Vault, and it's very interesting because Team Enigma has also been working on our own version of Anakin Data Vault. I'm not ready to talk about it yet, but it's very funny because we came to the same conclusion. He's playing the 3 copies of Cop Veins and is running the 3 copies of Bounty Hunter Crew. So I think it was all the players from the same team who brought this deck, and they've been extremely successful in this deck. There's I think one Anakin Data Vault who made top 8 in the pool 2, and there's 2 Anakin Data Vault who made top 8 in pool 1, and it was literally the first and second. So that's some very, very impressive result because there were not that many Anakin Data Vaults in the event, but because it's kind of a new deck, even though we've seen Anakin Data Vault before. It's never been a meta deck, where this is really a deck that is going to be a force to be reckoned with. So yeah, Cop Veins and Bounty Hunter Crew, we were kind of on the same, Team Enigma, we were kind of on the same page. We were also playing those cards. So there's a few different things compared to our version of the deck, which I won't get into more details. Let's talk about this specific version. So obviously, what's the big deal with this deck? Why is this deck so much better than it used to be? Because Charismatic is insane. That's the thing. Charismatic is the best card of the set, and the best deck to take advantage of Charismatic is Anakin Data Vault. So it is something actually a pretty good deck building method, by the way. Whenever a new set comes out and you identify a card that is clearly the best card in the set, building a deck that takes the most advantage of that card is a good starting point to build a deck. And this is kind of what Anakin Data Vault was. It's like, okay, we'll take advantage as much as possible to Charismatic. And how do we do this? We play 3 copies of Charismatic into Anakin because we can literally sacrifice this 2-drop into and kill a 3/5 opponent, which are some of the tankiest turn 2, which is just insane value. And then you can leave behind a 0/2 that can actually sacrifice himself into something that's 4 health. So the value that you get is just completely insane. And then obviously we play Cop Veins because Cop Veins can get Charismatic. And then we get Bounty Hunter Crew, which is a card that is just a strong card anyway, that can search for a Cop Veins or Charismatic, and Cop Veins himself search Charismatic. So basically this gives us like the redundancy of like being able to pull off this card. Obviously this deck this is only of course a starting point. There's so many other cards that this deck got. We obviously have Mina Bonteri, which is amazing in Anakin because the only weakness of Mina Bonteri is that she only has 2 attack, but obviously she turns into a 4 attack with Skywalker, which will kill most 2-drops in the game. And then on top of this, we can search Mina Bonteri with Cop Veins, and once again we can search Cop Veins with the Bounty Hunter Quarry. So It's just we have the redundancy of all those 2-drops that are some of the best 2-drops, that are literally the 2 best 2-drops in the game right now. And obviously 2-drops on good 2-drops, Anakin can turn them into absolute monsters. And then obviously we got a lot of other new cards. We got finally Gun Warriors, who's finally getting his spot in the light. I think I've always said that Gun Warriors was great in Anakin, but they've never really found a deck for him. But this is really a good deck for him, as obviously he gets his 5 attack and can trade with other things, get himself just a shield, and you also get to heal at the same time. Just a really solid card. I don't know if this will make it to the final version of the deck once the deck gets a little bit more involved, but it's definitely a good option to have. Huang is also seeing played in this deck, which is interesting. Then we see Captain Typho, of course. This card is, as I said, the best 4th drop Sentinels in the game. Really, really powerful in this deck, and obviously with a +2 attack bonus coming from Anakin, he can actually snipe a lot of leaders that have 6 health leaders without dying, which is just incredible. Obviously, Shamsunura is great in this deck because we are in a meta where there's full of Han-1, and obviously the classic ramp decks. And Queen Amidala is also just a great card, since the deck is pretty aggressive. And we also have Cinta. Yeah, there's only 1 copy of it. I think Cinta, I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think this card has been vastly overhyped. It's a great card, but it's definitely not like the absolute powerhouse that people were describing it to be. With that being said, in this deck it's pretty strong because this allows you, whenever your opponent has an answer to Anakin, this allows you to basically just go, you're going to get at least 1 swing out of Anakin. The action cheating can be very powerful as well against aggressive decks. So this is basically, so for the space, on the space side, we have pretty much options of Blue Leader still, of course, one of the best cards in the game. We'll see Sudden Ferocity seeing play as one of, the General's Blade, still the General's Blade's Gundgi, still very much a thing in his deck. And we also have, General Blades can also be played on Huang and Obi-Wan. And we also see the Jedi Starfighter, which is just a great, solid turn 1. This is basically our antidote to space decks. This card is so good against space decks. That's why it's here. It has low attack, but this is compensated by Anakin. Kills most of the 4 health space decks, space cards in the game, which is just very, very, way too good to be ignored. And then Red 5, because there's a lot of Han 2, I guess. And yeah, just a really, really cool deck. Really well put together, and it did really amazing in the event. 3 copies of the Outer Rim Constable in, which makes sense. This card is, once again, can be a menace combined with the +2 attack coming from Anakin, but more importantly, you can fetch it out of the Cup Veins. So this means that you're not gonna have any issue with any upgrades. You can just get rid of them all the time, which is great. Maybe a 3 of in the main is a bit too much. But once again, the testing will come out. Are we in a meta where there's a lot of upgrades? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then Outer Rim is definitely going to make it in the main a lot. Really cool deck. I'm spending a lot of time on this deck because this is pretty much the newest deck that I think is really going to see play. Even though it is kind of just a good stuff deck, right? It's a deck that says, oh, I'm just going to run the best card in the game in every single format, and we'll be able to reveal soon enough what the Enigma version of this deck looks like. I'll probably make a video about it. I think it's such a powerful deck, and in my opinion, it's going to be one of the new deck to beat in the upcoming meta. Moving on, we got Wu, who came out with this Kira Daredevil. You know that he's a Kira Daredevil specialist, even though he plays many other decks, but this is really the deck that he's been loving to play the most. And as you can see, he's running quite a few new cards from the new set. He's running, of course, this 3/3 for 2. That's going to give Kira a much-needed, much better 2-drop, which the deck really was suffering with before. He's also running this new guy, the 1/4 Sentinel's Grit. A great card in Kira because you can turn it into a 2/2 Shielded Sentinels. It's basically another Sentinel unit like Pike Sentinels that you can add into the deck. So it's even slightly better than Pike Sentinels, I believe. So nice. That's why it's a 3 of here. As you can see, it's a very mid-range version of Kira. Only 1 copies of Super Laser Blast. Only 2 copies of Vigilance. So not. Wu was probably not expecting to face a lot of Hard Control, which is honestly a fair meta call. I don't think Hard Control was likely to see play in this meta. So Vigilance, only a 2 of, only 1 Super Laser Blast. Also not that many late game cards, only a handful of cards that cost more than 8, that cost 8 or more. So that's not a lot of late game. Only 1 Reinforcement Walkers. That's not a lot of inevitability. So it's a very, very mid-range focused version of the deck. He's playing, of course, the new Cat Bane that can come out and kill a unit that is really, really good with the Kira Flip, because you get the Kira Flip, you have everybody's HP, and then you get a Cat Bane to finish them off. Really, really strong. What else did we get here? Yeah, we also has 2 copies of Hyperspace Disaster, respecting, of course, the space decks a lot. I feel like I don't think Hyperspace Disaster is as good in Kira as it is in Ray, because I think Ray does a better job. Ray Default does a better job at slowing down the game because of all the amount of heal and stuff. But obviously, Kira is absolutely a deck that's going to be running Hyperspace Disaster. In this case, Wu decides to play it in the main. We'll see in the long term if it goes in the main or if it goes in the sideboard. But yeah. Also, kind of nice to see him playing 2 copies of Eye of Cyan. Not a card that I find to be like very overpriced, but once again with the Kira Flip, everything getting half HP, it makes it a lot easier to actually play the Eye of Zion to kind of ambush into something and kill it. So Eye of Zion is probably at its best in Kira Default, even though I'm still not a big fan of the card. So overall, what can we say about this deck? I think it's pretty much one of the most mid-rangey version of Kira I've seen in a long time. It's definitely like, it's what I was saying before, is like a lot of people are saying, yeah, there's still a control deck in the meta. We actually, if you follow the last podcast that we had, a lot of people are still like Beton was arguing that control is still very much a thing in the game. I kind of disagree. Basically, like, yes, there's still control deck in the game, but control decks are definitely on the decline. So obviously we're still early in the meta, and this could very well change. But I believe that even the control decks are turning into more mid-rangey decks. So pretty much Kira Default is the only real control deck that was basically has made result in this top 16, being played, of course, by an amazing player. And even that control deck doesn't read to me as a real control deck. There's once again only 5 cards above 8 cost among the proactive late game threats, and only 1 Super Laser Blast. It's pretty much as mid-rangey as you can be for a control deck, in my opinion. Anyway, moving on now to the player who was the first of the pool, and this is another Anakin Default. I'm not going to spend any time on it, because it's pretty much the same deck as his friend. They're both a couple of different cards in the sideboard, but pretty much the same deck overall. They were basically probably on the same team and did some really amazing results here with this Anakin Data Vault. So well done. We also see some play with the Legal Authority in this specific version of the deck, though. I just want to pay attention to this. So this card is pretty much, I think, to help against space aggro, I would say. Kind of have a ways to have a removal against space aggro. We go space aggro, you go Legal Authority, you can get rid of a unit, and you know that those people are very unlikely to get that unit back, because now this unit has +2 health, it's on the ground. You know, those type of deck don't really run any removal. So Legal Authority has always been a great card, especially to give removal to a color combination that doesn't really have access to them, and allow them to basically get rid of annoying units without knowing very well that they're unlikely to get them back. Getting into so that was actually the top 8, never mind. Getting to top 4 now. Into top 4 we got Reflex from Team Bottom Network, and he was running the Yoda Tarkin Town deck. So we've seen this deck in Legend of the Falls, especially early on when 4th was still legal. After the 4th ban, the deck kind of disappeared. And then now it's coming back here. So the idea is that you're running the Ray, you're trying to take advantage of the card draw coming from Yoda. In this case, he's not running the Force, and he prefers to run, he's not running the Force, he's preferred to run Tarkin Town. So obviously, if you can get the Ray draw early and combine his Tarkin Town, it can be just really backbreaking, because this is basically a removal that can kill something that has 5 health for free, but you need to be able to pull it off, which is not always so easy. So yeah, a lot of card draw, of course, to basically kind of get your chance to get Ray, even though this version does not play the Kia di Mundi. That's why we play the aggressive the aggressive negotiation. Whenever you draw a lot of cards, this card, whenever you draw a lot of cards and you play red, this is a card that is worth having, even if you're not particularly aggressive. So there's also some interesting choices in this deck. Obviously, Charismatic is the main reason I think this Reflex decided to play this deck. So very interesting choices here with the Jedi Starfighter here seeing play, despite the lack of +2 bonus attack coming from. But once again, you can still use Tarkin Town to kill something big relatively early on in the game. So very interesting deck. We're also seeing 3 copies of, forgot the name of that card, but it basically does -2/-2 and draw you a card for 3. A lot of ways to deal damage, basically kill unit by 1,000 cuts, combining minus effects with damage with Daring Raid. Also playing a main deck Galen Urso, which makes the flip, Boba flip, the Yoda flip even more difficult to interact with. I think that can be very powerful. Even though in the main deck I think it might be a little bit too much. A lot of very interesting choices here, things I would have never thought would make it into a Yoda deck. Definitely against aggro, this deck is a little bit sus because you're running, of course, 7 deploy leader with Tarkin Town and you have no way to ramp. So that's definitely very, very difficult. But there's a lot of removals, a lot of ways to restore. So maybe that's enough for the deck to keep itself alive. It's actually a pretty aggressive deck, as you can see. Most expensive card in the deck is Luke, is basically the top of the curve. So, yeah, very interesting deck. Very different from any other Yoda we've seen. We'll see how good that is. In the long run, I personally will still, on paper, would still prefer the Blue Fold, but I've never played with or against this specific version of Yoda, so we'll see how that works out for it. Moving on now to the other Anakin Daredevil. This one came out first of the first pool of the event and came out top 4, so really great performance for Pasquale. And he's running, of course, the Anakin Daredevil that we see already. Just a couple of card choice difference, but the crux of the deck is pretty much the same. Now let's get into the finalist. The finalist, we have Carlos Apodaca running a Quinlan Tarkin Town. And we saw also worth noticing, I don't know how well Quinn Tarkin did in general, but I know that Wu also managed to play Quinn Tarkin Town during the team event, and they actually won the event with the K2D team. So I know this deck is legit. Even though they are not quite playing exactly the same deck, and I think some of the best upgrade for the deck was really, really powerful 2-drops. We know that yellow Heroism has always struggled with good 2-drops, but definitely here Heroism Aggression got just so many great 2-drops. Of course, with Carrie Nemec and the Warrior of the Clan. Those cards are just incredible for the deck. So basically, the kind of the vibe that the deck gives me is that a lot of people played early on like a Padme Tarkin Town, and when they probably play Padme Tarkin Town, it's like, this deck is great, but I wish I would just playing Quinlan, and probably playing Padme brought them back to Quinlan to some degree and say, how about just play those cards but playing in Quinlan instead of Padme. And bring this back, of course, to this deck. Of course, a couple of card changes because of that. For example, of course, Quinlan does not have access to the Anakin from the starter set, which I think is very strong. But obviously, you got a leader that deploys earlier. You got an ability that is not as constrictive in terms of deck building to build around. And yeah, just the early deploy makes the card very, very worth it. So the rest of the deck is pretty much just good old classic Quinlan that we've seen love. We also have Blue Ace, a new addition for the deck. That has helped the deck a lot into the space department, bringing a really significant threat and stabilizing the board at the same time. I think is very, very powerful. And of course, you can combine this with the pink to kill something that has 5 health, which is great. So really, really cool deck. A great one Sudden Ferocity, which has kind of been in all red deck, has been like as a one-of here and there. It's a card that saw a lot of play, but only as a one-of. So I don't know how much impact it has on the overall meta, but it's definitely a card that we're seeing here and there. And yeah, just basically good old Quinlan with better 2-drops. In my opinion, though, I think Quinlan was already a very powerful deck, even after 4th Urban. I think it was a really good deck already. But I think the reason why people didn't play it is because they were just sick of Quinlan. It was like, okay, Quinlan is now a lot worse than it used to be, and it definitely was a lot worse than after after the ban of fourth throw. So people just wanted to play something new, wanted to move on from Quinlan, which is completely understandable. But I think as a result, I think Quinlan was already a bit underplayed. So definitely, I think the deck was definitely a little bit underestimated in the previous set, and now it's actually a lot better because of all those great 2-drops that it had. So I think just Charismatic is just going to be an absolute menace. I think it should be a 3-of in this deck, to be fair. But yeah, and so we're definitely expecting so it's definitely something that I think we're gonna see more Quinlan moving forward. Now getting into the champion, it was run by Han 1 Green. Still, of course, a very strong deck. This deck plays 2 Captain Typho as new cards, but other than this, pretty much the good old classic. This one is very, very ground focused. Not that many space units. Only 9 space units in total, which is not a lot for Han 1 Green. But yeah, pretty much the deck is the good old classic Han 1 that we know and love. Yeah, there's not much to say about it. It's just a really is just solid Han. As I said, I think so we saw now Han 1 Green won basically the Boston Network event, and they also won the Boston the Two Moons Invitational. So we're seeing Han 1 Green having a lot of success early on. I personally don't think this is going to be representative of the rest of the meta. Obviously, Han 1 Green is still going to be a tier 1 deck. I'm not disputing that. However, I don't think it's going to be the best deck in the meta. I just think that early on in the set, as I said, it just benefits a lot, like very proactive strategies. And Han 1 Green is one of those strategies, and to really benefit from this kind of like wild cards. I can play this deck in any meta, and I can do into a complete unknown meta, and I know I can do well because I have those very powerful proactive strategies. And people might not be expecting Han 1 Green, and they're gonna get punished because this card does require some specific answers to actually be countered. So really powerful deck, obviously, and still a powerful deck, still a tier 1 deck. Will it be the best deck in the set? I don't necessarily think that's going to be the case. We'll see how it goes. Before we head on into the rest of the video, I just want to let you know that you can pick up Charismatic on card market for €10. I think it's the most expensive rare we've seen in a very long time. I think the last time you want to see a rare that was reaching double digits in terms of price, you have to go back to set 1 with K2SO and maybe Red 3, sorry. When the shortage was the shortage of product of set 1 was big. Yeah, so it's not a surprise. It's the best rare. I think it's safe to say it's the best rare in the game, and it's the best card in the set. And actually, I think there's an argument to say that this Charismatic could be the best card in the game. We'll see how it goes. This is kind of a hot take, but there's an argument to say that Charismatic could be the best card in the game. Moving on to a couple of spicy deck I wanted to select. So for the spicy decks, I only decided to select decks that went X2, because obviously when your deck goes X3 on the 7 rounds, that means it went 4-3. Not particularly impressive, but X2 is actually pretty legit performance, and a couple of spicy decks that didn't make it to the top 16 but managed to make X2 with some relatively spicy decks. So I wanted to show them off. First of all, I wanted obviously always like to feature George and his deck list. I think in my opinion, he's one of the best deck builder in the US, and he decided to bring a very spicy Kizuda Yellow. Unfortunately, didn't quite make it to the top 16 with his deck, but a couple of new cards are interesting. So of course, he's going double 1-drop opening. So it's just a very aggressive space decks that we've seen over and over again, but this one is running double yellow, obviously for cunning, almost exclusively focusing on space. The Mandalorian is still a great card for double yellow. It can really race on the ground really well, and obviously still a great pilot to play as well. It's play Ebon Arc. Ebon Arc hasn't really seen much play in this event, even though it saw a lot of play in the 2 Moons event, and it had and we also see Lightmaker, who also is another card that saw a lot of play during the 2 Moons event. That I think is a very powerful card, and it's a great addition to this. Any yellow white deck that running space should at least consider running this card. I think it puts a lot of pressure. Yes, it's easy to deal with, but when his voids get dealt with, It has a very powerful when defeated effect. Then we saw Blue Ace seeing play, of course, which is a card we knew that was going to see a lot of play. You can actually turn off the disadvantage with Kazuda, which is great. And we also see the new shuttle, the 2/4 shuttle, that is when play. So some people are probably going to ask me, what do you think is the best? Do you think this double yellow Kazuda is better, or do you think the Enigma version that plays City Complex is better? I think it really comes down to the fact that we are very early in the meta. And early in the meta, the Kazuda Secure Complex, the way we build it with Al, is really to be a very, very meta-gamed deck. It's a deck that you want to run. You do not want to run this deck into an unknown meta. You want to know exactly what you're facing. And then you know exactly when to play the discard in the right moment. So if you're going into a complete unknown meta, it makes a lot more sense to be playing a more proactive strategy like Kazuda Yellow, where you can really go at it very proactively. And you don't really care what your opponent is doing, you're just going to go face. This is much easier to play, and it doesn't require you to know what the meta is going to be. You're just going face. You got a lot of great addition. You either go double draw an opening, or really solid 2 drops, and then you go really solid 3 drops, and then really solid 4 drops, and then really solid 5 drops. You got Cunning for racing, got Mandalorians for racing, got a couple of pilots to take your opponent by surprise, and that's it. That's really what you're going for. So as far as the sideboard is concerned, we got Jam Communication against people who have specific answers against you, Bamboozle against other space deck. This Razor Crest guy, I actually just don't even know what this card does. I'm sorry. Yeah, should have come prepared. He's playing this as a 3 of as well, so definitely has to be something to do in the list. Anyway, I'm sorry, I don't know what this card does. And then we got the Facing Your Friends, a card that we didn't see a lot of play in this event. It's a card that has a very big deck building restriction. But I think it's a card that probably was ran against control decks, probably. Very good to be able to kind of spread and go wide against very controlly decks. Probably didn't have to use this a lot in this event, though. Moving on, there's another double yellow deck I wanted to highlight, the Sabe double yellow, which I believe is kind of sad, but I think it's the highest performing deck that features a leader from set 6. I think Sabe is a pretty legit leader, at least in specific matchup. The discard effect, so he's running this guy here, which is a card that we've seen in decks that likes to discard and restrict your opponent in cards. Chancellor Palpatine here, seeing some plays a 2 of in combination, of course, great combination with Facing with your friends. So basically, if you compare this to, we did feature on Thought Takes a Sabe double yellow list. Very early on, of course, it was only a prototype where I was going double 1-drop opening. In this version, decided to go for a more classic, just solid 2 drops instead. And I think I understand this. The way he runs this makes more sense. I think double 1-drop opening, you just run out of card a little bit too quickly on a deck like this, and I don't think you need to do that. So probably better to just go 2 drops, 2 drop, 3 drops, 4 drops for the specific version. So I think Sabe is a leader that is really powerful. It's really difficult to play with, and I think where the meta is developed and you know what you're facing, it's going to be a little bit easier to play the leader, because it'd be easier to know what to get rid of, be easier to know what to discard when she comes out. But I think she's really, really potent, and she has a pretty decent deployment. So I think she's going to be quite good. Also running the Light Maker, which makes sense, the Blue Ace as well. So I think it's a pretty solid deck, and I'm looking forward to see how it's going to perform, whether it's going to be tier 2 or tier 3. It's definitely not going to be tier 1. But I think unfortunately, that's kind of as good as we can hope for in this new set. That's a bit unfortunate, but that's the reality. I mean, it's a really, really cool deck, and I think if you're running into double yellow, Sabe is probably the deck you should definitely pick up and try for yourself. Kind of going on into the learnings here, what did we learn from this event? So I think the first learning I have for you guys is that pretty much mid-range meta is confirmed. Almost all the decks that we saw in top 16 here, with a few exceptions. I think there was a Sabine Yellow, there's a Han 4, but in the top 16, pretty much every single deck was a mid-range deck. Even the Kira deck was, like the Yoda red was very mid-range, most expensive card, cost 7. The mid-range green is a bit more controlly, but it's still, once again, basically the most controlly deck that we've seen was the Kira Data Vault, which was a very mid-range version of Kira, and the Yoda Green Force, which is once again a very mid-range version. And once again, very few, not that many aggro decks, which is surprising that early on in the set. No Sabine in top 16. So we are very much in a mid-range meta. It seems to be even more so than in the previous set, which is crazy because the last set was already very, very mid-range focus. I think Karis Nemec is going to make it very, very hard to play control. Once again, it's only early on in the set. So we are, obviously, as the set progresses, we will see more mid-control deck moving forward. But I still think playing control is going to be incredibly difficult because people are basically countering control without even trying. And that's just really, really sad. They just play cards in their main deck that are just really, really strong cards in general that do happen to be even better against control. And that's going to make it very difficult to play control. And I think control decks are going to have to evolve to be a bit more mid-range focus, like the Yoda Green Force or the Kira that we saw. Other learnings is that Anakin Dadavolt is the newest deck to beat. I think if there's one new deck that is going to be tier 1 that we saw from Secret of Power, it has to be Anakin Dadavolt, even though it's not really a new deck. It's just an updated version, but it is a deck that is coming from being a deck that didn't really see much play into one of the force to be reckoned with. It's not a coincidence that we're seeing 3 of them doing extremely well across the 2 pods and even doing well afterward in the top cut. It's not a coincidence. It's an incredibly powerful deck. And I can confirm this because I've played this deck, and in Team Enigma, we're also running this deck, and we know it's very powerful. So it's not a deck that is new to us. In Team Enigma, we've been playing this deck, and we're not surprised to see this deck doing well. Queenland is back is another one. I think, as I said, I think it was a little bit underplayed after the 4th row ban, but it got a lot of great tools for the new set, and it's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with as well. The saddest thing to say, and I don't know if this event is going to be confirmation, but basically set 6 leaders, but even more sad is like set 6 archetypes have failed to make any impact on the meta so far. So we are kind of back to basically this set. I mean, it's kind of, to be fair with Secret of Power, it's the last set before rotation, and obviously whenever you're the last set before rotation, you have the toughest competition because this is where you're going to have the most set to compete with. Once rotation comes out, this set is probably going to show its value a lot more. With that being said, I'm still very, very unimpressed by the archetypes and leaders that have been shown to us in Secrets of Power. I was hopeful for a couple of kind of strange leaders, like Bale, because they were doing something very, very unique, and I was hopeful that those leaders maybe would be good, and I think I had a lot of initial success with Bale, but after playing more, I realized Bale is a good deck, but it requires a very specific meta to work, and this is definitely not a good meta to play Bale right now. And here it really is now. We are forced to Padme Tarkintown. I think this tournament is showing us something, is that Padme Tarkintown is not a good deck. It was heavily played, and it completely collapsed. And even to add insult to injuries for Padme, Quinlan is basically doing well. So why would you play a Padme when you can play Quinlan, which is pretty much just the same idea, the same color combination? There's no reason to play Padme. Unfortunately, it seems that Padme is definitely just a worse version of Quinlan, and that's basically Padme's worst nightmare. And that's very unfortunate because Padme was probably one that the leaders that we were hoping the most. Sabe, I think she has some untapped potential. She might do a bit better, but she still hasn't really done much in this event. And then another one that we were a little bit hopeful for was the how's it called, Mr. Palpatine. Definitely was underplayed in this event. I think this leader, even though I think might just be a worse version of Kylo Dadavolt, deserved a little bit more love than that. But yeah, basically so no play at all. So it's just very, very unfortunate. But yeah, this set is just bringing us insanely overpowered 2-drops and a couple of plot cards. That's just not enough in my opinion. And it's just it's not the renewal of the meta that you can hope for when a new expansion hits. Once again, I'm giving this with the caveat of saying that obviously it's the last set of before rotation. After rotation, the set will have more of an impact, but it's still a little bit disappointing to see that this set is not having an impact whatsoever. Karis Numming is confirmed to be the best card in the set by far, and I think she was underplayed. Yeah, this was one of the most played card in both events. She was by far the most played card of set 6 in this on both events, but I think she was underplayed. I think there's a lot of decks that could have run her that didn't. Notably a lot of hand 2. I think that even hand 2 decks should be running her, in my opinion. So he's an incredibly powerful card, and yeah, I'm looking. We're gonna be seeing a lot more of him very soon. Anyway, thank you for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. This was definitely the biggest tournament we're gonna have before the holiday break. So definitely that's gonna be an important data point. There's a lot of data on Subase. You can go on Subase to basically collect all the data. Big thanks again. Congratulations, first of all, to everybody who did well in this event, as well as people who did well in the team event, and obviously big thanks to the BIATL network community and staff for putting together that awesome event. And yeah, thank you so much for following that video, and I'll see you next time.